Just let me ask you about his place in the history of English football. I'm not sure about John, we'll ask in a minute, but I felt that in his first 10 years at Arsenal, that he was a giant. He changed the football culture, changed training methods, brought in players like Henry, Vieira, Overmars, Bergkamp, who were there. I think Bergkamp might have been there when he arrived, but he actually created something new. I think he stands there with the giants in English football, despite the fact that the last several years have been tough. Now, one dissenting voice that I read was Graham Souness in the Sunday Times. Souness said he was lucky that he inherited Tony Adams and those guys, and that he'd been overrated. Now, I don't agree. I strongly disagree with that. But really, what matters, you've been at that club. You are an Arsenal man. You've been there since you were a kid. What's your assessment of Wenger and his place in the game?
Well, in his first 10 years, Eamon, I think he was absolutely superb. To go back to the very start, at that time, Alex Ferguson looked and Manchester United looked as if they had a grip on English football that wasn't going to be moved by any other of the English clubs. Liverpool couldn't cope with them. Leeds United couldn't cope with them. Chelsea, this was pre-Abramovich, so
they were nothing.
They were nothing before Abramovich. And Arsene Wenger came in, and Souness is correct in as much as that that foundation of the team was already there. However, he changed those players into playing differently, and he bought players to complement what he already had, and he was absolutely outstanding in the selection of players. You mentioned some of them,
yes.
But particularly Vieira, Petit, Overmars. Yeah. Put those three guys together with the likes of Bold, Adams, Winterburn, Dixon, Seaman in goal, Ian Wright up front, and Ray Parlour on the wing. Real strong lads who could go away from home and mix it, and not be frightened of teams being over physical with them. If they wanted to be physical with this team, they could be physical, but they could play as well. And Arsene Wenger, I think, got the likes of that back four to actually play football from the back, which they didn't do, or they hadn't done under George Graham. What else did he do? I think he changed the way those players actually thought about their careers. He gave them another perspective on how to look after themselves. He changed the drinking culture that was at most clubs at the time, and his brilliance in the transfer market at the time, particularly with French players, was ahead of the game.
Yeah, Henry, for example, when he came, he wasn't an established player, was he?
No, he'd been at Juventus. He had been at Monaco as a kid. Juventus bought him. They played him on the wing. He was in and out of the team. That's when Juventus had the likes of Zidane. They were a strong side, and Del Piero. And Henry was in and out of the team. But Arsene Wenger knew firsthand how good the lad was. And not only did he bring him to the club, but he pushed him more as a centre forward. And he ran amok in the Premier League with his power and his pace and his finishing. So he was absolutely brilliant in the transfer market for a long time. But then what happened? Chelsea came along. Abramovich came along. Eventually Man City came along. Liverpool tried to be more competitive. Spurs got their act together. And with the building of the Emirates Stadium, things had to change financially for Wenger. And really, we've never recovered the ground that was lost at that time.
A good example might be Fabregas leaving, because Fabregas had...
we lost an awful lot of players, Eamon, because we couldn't cope, could we? We couldn't cope.
You weren't going to win things, and you couldn't pay them.
No, we couldn't pay them as much as the top clubs in Europe could pay. We couldn't pay them as much as Manchester United, Chelsea, and eventually Manchester City. So we lost. Ashley Cole was the first one to go. He was the best left back around. He ended up going to Chelsea, so we lost him, and others followed. Van Persie went to Man United, was instrumental in winning the league. Fabregas went back to Barcelona. all these things happened. But whilst all this was going on, he did a pretty good job. You know, he finished in the top 4 every year, and he managed to win quite a number of FA Cups going along with it. And I'm not having a go at Spurs, but Spurs haven't won a trophy whilst they've been doing well. So Wenger, it didn't compare to his first 2 years, but he didn't do bad in his last 10 years. But things have changed across the board of English football, and Arsenal have struggled to retain that competitiveness that they had under Wenger in the first 10 years.